بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والعاقبة للمتقين، والجنة للموحدين، ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين نبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, all praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the choicest of blessings and salutations upon our master Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Alhamdulillah, through the fadl and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we continue with our class on the Al-Risala Al-Jami'ah, or the Essentials of Islam, by Habib Ahmad bin Zayn Al-Habshi rahimahullah tabaraka wa ta'ala. This morning in Mau, we have a Dars Aam here at the madrasa. Every Tuesday morning I have a class with all the students of the madrasa, the Alim course section as well as the Hifz section. And students read different books, and one of the books that was recited or read this morning is a book titled Imams of the Valley by our dear colleague and friend, Shaykh in Pakistan, from the UK, who has been serving the way of the Sada al-Ba'alawi with his amazing pen in writing and translating for a number of decades, alhamdulillah. And one of those works of his is a book titled Imams of the Valley, which is a list of biographies of scholars that lived in the valley of Hadramaut, beginning with the Nabiullah, Nabi Hud alayhi salatu wassalam, and then some of the Sahaba that settled in the valley, and then the great Imams of the family of the Sada al-Ba'alawi. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with them all. And it just so happened, I did not think about it at the time, but it just so happened that it just so happened at the time that I didn't think about it, not knowing that this evening I'll be actually teaching the book of Habib Ahmad bin Zayn al-Habshi. So this morning they read his biography, or part of his biography at least, not realizing and knowing that today we actually continue reading his great work. And Habib Ahmad bin Zayn al-Habshi rahimahullah ta'ala, he came from a place called Ghurfa, which is very close to the city of Sayyun. And he lies buried in the Hawta of Habib Ahmad bin Zayn al-Habshi, which is just outside of Ghurfa today. And one of the things we read, I just thought I might as well share something about him. Al-Imam al-Dhahabi in his Siyar A'lam Nubala, he said that in the dhikr al-salihin tanzil al-rahamat. When one mentions and speaks of the salihin, then Allah's mercy descends. And Imam Dhahabi was one of the great Imam, one of the great Salaf, one of the great scholars of this Ummah. And he said that when we speak of the pious, Allah's mercy descends. And therefore, whenever we find opportunity to speak of the pious, we should do so. And Allah spoke about the Anbiya alayhimu salatu wassalam in the Quran, so that we can draw lessons from their lives. And one of the amazing things of Habib Ahmad was his thirst for knowledge, his unquenchable thirst for ilm, and the amount of books he studied under so many various ulama. And he was once seen sitting, doing some research on a particular matter, and he had 100 books around him. Like, you can't see on the camera now, but all the books that I'm currently teaching, or most of them, are sitting here on my table. So I have the Wajiz al-Tatahazanhitu, I have the Taqrib al-Husul, I have the Fath al-Wahab, and the Umdat al-Salik, Shafa Hamadi, I have the Shamal al-Muhammadiyya, one or two other books. But he had 100 books around. And he said to his students that if all these books were to be burnt now, the knowledge of these books won't be lost, because that knowledge is all in my chest. So sometimes we look at the Essentials of Islam and we think that this is just a small book, and we don't realize that it was authored by a great Imam, a great scholar, and a great jurist, and a great wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mentioned a few titles that I have here on my table. And if those books were to be destroyed, then none of its knowledge will really be preserved. He had 100 books around him, and he said that, of course, this was a personal setting with him and his student. He said, if all these books were to be burnt, you can see part of my library behind me. That's about 100 books. If all these books had to be burnt, the knowledge of those books won't be lost because I have that knowledge here in my chest. Alhamdulillah. So we are studying the Risala Jami of Habib Ahmad bin Zain al-Habshi. And what we covered thus far is the definition of fasting. And we then began with a discussion of the arkan, the elements of fasting, what are required for the fasting to be valid. And he started off by saying the intention. You must have a niyyah. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are only valid with intentions, said our master Sayyiduna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then he said, لِكُلِّ يَوْمٍ. The niyyah must be made for every day, and it must be made at night, from between Maghrib until before Fajr. And then we also added to that you have to make ta'yin, specify that you're fasting a day of Ramadan. Nawaitu sawma Ramadan, sawma yawmin min Ramadan. I make intention to fast the following day of Ramadan. He then said, rahimahullah, that the second rukn, or the second element of fasting, is to, we say that the condition of the validity of fasting is that, or rather the second rukn, yes, or the second condition, what did we call them actually? Shurut sihhati sawm. That's what we call it. The conditions for the validity of fasting. I can actually make a note that these are conditions for the validity of fasting. The first was the intention. The second was that al-imsak, that you need to abstain from a number of things. And what you need to abstain from, what we covered last week, was al-jima'. You need to abstain from sexual relations. You have to abstain from sexual relations. And we said that sexual relations in a private, be it the front private of one's wife or the back private, or even if it happens to be zina, fornication, or adultery, whatever it may be, whether the sexual intercourse was halal or whether it was haram, if the head of a male private disappears in the front or back private of another intentionally, then that is considered to be jima', and that will invalidate the fast. Now, and condition that the person knows that it is haram, and he has sexual relations out of choice. He's not forced or coerced. Now, and both the fast of the person, that the male as well as that of the female, the wati' and the mawtu'ah, their fast will be invalid. Then, in addition to the fact that their fast is invalid, it is now incumbent and compulsory that the person that is guilty of having intercourse, who did so in a sinful way, the great expiation becomes compulsory upon him. Al-kafaratul uzma. And the kafaratul uzma means that he must set free a female slave. And if there is no female slave for him to set free, he needs to fast 2 consecutive months, as we stated. And if he does not have the capacity to do so, so he actually tries and is not able to fast 2 months consecutively, he needs to feed 60 poor people, each of them 1 mud of food. A mud of food is about 500 grams. He needs to give 60 people a meal. So that's the kafara. In addition to the kafara, he needs to, if he does not acknowledge his wrong and repent, he must receive a punishment from the qadi, a discretionary punishment. He must make qada of the day that he has sexual relations in. And even though he has sexual relations and his fast is invalid, he must continue abstaining from food and drink for the rest of that day. That we covered last week. We said also he needs to abstain from istimna. And what istimna means is masturbation. So he needs to abstain from masturbation, both male and female. So if a person masturbates knowing that it is haram intentionally and is not coerced or forced, irrespective whether the masturbation is halal or whether the masturbation is haram, which is interesting because I'm sure many of you are asking yourselves the question, what masturbation is haram and what masturbation is halal? And a male that masturbates with his own hand, that is considered to be haram, right? Whereas a male, a husband who masturbates with the hand of his wife, in other words, his wife applies masturbation to him, that would be halal. That would be halal. Irrespective of whether the masturbation happens to be halal or haram, masturbation will invalidate the fast. Now, however, while it invalidates the fast, it does not require a kafara. One does not have to set free a female slave. Neither does he have to fast 2 consecutive months. Neither does he or she have to feed 60 people. Now, so the first thing, you need to abstain from sexual relations. The second thing, you need to abstain from masturbation. The third thing, you must abstain from istiqa'ah, from inducing vomiting, How does a person induce vomit? Normally you push your finger right to the back of the throat and you try to induce vomit. That will invalidate the fast. Now, inducing vomit would happen generally in one of two ways. You'd find that a person who either, and what they call it now, anorexia, someone that wants to lose weight initially and then they eventually reach a point where they constantly vomiting out food. So that's inducing vomiting. It invalidates the fast. Another person that induces vomiting is a person is nauseous. I've seen this before. Someone is nauseous and he feels bad and like he needs to vomit, but he doesn't naturally, or she doesn't naturally vomit. So what they do is they come up with a way to bring themselves to vomit. One of the ways, by pushing their fingers down their throat. Inducing vomiting while fasting invalidates the fast. Whether some food goes back down your throat, some of the vomit goes back down your throat or not, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter. It will invalidate the fast. Because Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that man dhara'ahu al-qay'u, a person who is overpowered by vomiting, right? He doesn't have a choice in the matter. His vomit comes out, fala qada alayhi. He does not need to make qada. His fast is valid and he can continue fasting. There's no qada. وَمَنِ اسْتَقَاءَ, but a person who induces vomiting, makes himself or brings him or herself to vomiting, فَعَلَيْهِ الْقَضَاء. They should make qada. Their fast is invalid and they need to make qada. Now, so the third thing is that you need to abstain from inducing vomiting. The fourth thing that you need to abstain from while fasting is going to take up most of our class today. And it's going to take up most of our class today and requires one to focus. I need everybody to focus as best as you can, especially if you have not been introduced to the concept before. We're going to be speaking about usulul ayn ila al-jawf. Now, so the fourth thing you need to abstain from is abstaining from what? Allowing any substance, no matter how small it may be, whether it's something that is usually consumed, in other words, whether it's something which is, whether it's an eatable, ma'kul or not, any substance, avoiding any substance from reaching a jawf. Now, a jawf is what we call a body cavity. Any hollow space within the body is considered to be a jawf. And based on the various narrations and hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the scholars, they deduct and deduce this particular rule, that if a substance reaches any body cavity, it will invalidate the fast. And that is basically in all the madhab. All the madhab adopted this particular qaida, that if any substance reaches a body cavity, it will invalidate the fast. Now, the body cavities that are important for us to keep in mind are what? Already, ideally, I need to actually bring up images. It's a pity I didn't think of this beforehand. I could have discussed with Shaykh Mas'ud and Muslims Connected, how can I bring up images to demonstrate exactly what body cavities are important for us to appreciate and understand in relation to fasting. So there's a part of the throat. So in other words, if you can picture the mouth enters here and then it comes down here. Once it reaches once it passes the area that is just past your tonsils, more or less. In an image, I can show you exactly what it is, right? Once it passes the area just behind your tonsils, I just forget the medical term, but it's something we were researching not too long ago, I wonder if I do a quick search if I can still find it on my phone. And even if I do find it on my phone, I'm not sure if you're going to actually see it. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Now, so the area is called the uvula, right? So I don't know how it's pronounced in our community. Again, I don't know how many is from Cape Town over here, but what we call the klein tongetjie, the uvula, right? Anything beyond that. So you take the uvula on top and then the epiglottis at the bottom. Now, if you take your nasal cavity, the nasal cavity runs down here, past down the throat. So the hadd al-zahir min al-fam is, I can't describe this to you without an image. And even the image is not going to come clear, right? I'll make a plan, Sayyidi Mas'ud, to revisit some of these masail next week, and I'll be able to upload images on the screen so you can get a better appreciation. So you basically have anything that goes past the uvula and the epiglottis at the bottom. If you draw a straight line between it, anything that goes beyond that will invalidate the fast. Because that part, the back of your throat, in other words, that runs down into your chest area, that is all considered to be part of the body cavity. It's considered to be part of the body cavity. So if I swallow a seed and it goes past the uvula and the epiglottis, if I draw a straight line between them, it's going to be a hollow space that comes to the back of my throat. If I eat anything that goes beyond that, even if it's a stone, it's not an eatable, even if it's a stone, even if it's a piece of cotton, right, then my fast will be invalid. Even if the jurists, they speak about, if I'm chewing on a piece of cotton, right, I'm chewing on this, they say on my sibha, I'm chewing my sibha. Or children have a tendency to bite their sleeves, like my kids always, my son pulls his sweater up and he puts his sweater in his mouth. Then I remove this piece of string that is mixed with saliva, I remove it from my mouth. Now it's no longer, my saliva in my mouth I can swallow. That's ma'fuun, it's saliva in my mouth, how can I not swallow? But now the saliva on the string, if I bring it back into my mouth and I suck the saliva off that string, I brought now something which, it was my saliva, but when I removed it, it became foreign to my body. Now I'm bringing a foreign substance back into my body and I'm swallowing it, my fast will be invalid. So any substance that goes beyond the back of the throat or reaches the back of the throat will invalidate the fast. One of the issues that came up of recent, of course, was the swab that we used when going for a COVID test. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved us from COVID and saved us from all the horrible COVID tests. But in many instances, when the swab was used to take a sample from my tonsils, then my fast would not be invalid, my fast would be valid, right? But if the swab went beyond my tonsils and beyond my uvula and epiglottis to the back of my throat, many a time they used to take samples from the back in the throat, then that would have invalidated my fast. That would have invalidated my fast. So I'll show you a drawing of this, inshallah. My commitment is to figure out how to upload the image so you can actually see exactly what I'm speaking about. So that's how our jurors looked at it. Another common question that comes up is the usage of an asthma pump. So one says that the asthma pump has nothing into it. It's just air, but it's not just air, because the canister of the asthma pump has a liquid into it. And that liquid essentially finds itself into my airways or my lungs, and it brings relief to my chest when my chest is tight. And if I was to take the pump and I was to use the pump and squeeze it onto my hand, the air onto my hand, I will find droplets. And that droplets is a substance. And the rule is that if any droplet, any substance reaches a jawf, a body cavity, my fast will be invalid. That's one body cavity, the back of my throat down into my chest. These are all body cavities. My ears beyond my inner ear, not the outer ear. The outer ear forms part of the body, but the inner ear is a body cavity. If something was to puncture my ear and reach the inner part of my ear, it's a body cavity, and if a substance reached a body cavity, my fast is invalid. So this is generally one of the concerns. One of the concerns is that if I swim, will water reach my inner ear? And will my fasting become invalid? And to that we say no. Why not? Because the eardrum prevents any substance from reaching the inner ear in most instances. There are times when the eardrum may be ruptured, or there may be an abnormality, in which case water could seep through and reach the inner part of my ear. However, in most instances, that cannot happen. I've heard a scholar once misunderstanding this question in our community, and somebody asked him, can I use earbuds while fasting? And he said, no, earbuds will break your fast. That's wrong, because the earbud doesn't go beyond the eardrum. If you should actually reach your eardrum or puncture your eardrum, you will experience excruciating pain. The earbud stops long. In any case, it's not healthy, I'm told, to use earbuds in any case, but just to cover the masala, it doesn't go as part of the outer ear, it doesn't reach the inner ear, so it would not invalidate the fast. What other masala, what other jawfs are there? Other jawfs is going to be, what forms part of the jawfs is the ihleel, which is the urethra, the makhraj al-bawl, both in the male and the female. That is considered to be a body cavity, and if anything reaches that, it will invalidate the fast. Another body cavity would be the big colon. I don't know what the actual word is now, but the big colon. So a person, if he was to use a suppository up his backside, pushing a suppository up his backside such that it reaches the colon, which is a body cavity, will invalidate the fast. So the body cavities are many. Even inside the head there's a body cavity, but there's no way to actually get something into that body cavity. I'm looking at the body cavities that actually have an impact on our fasting. So it's the big colon area. If anything, suppository gets pushed up a person's backside, it will invalidate the fast. If a person uses a, what do you call it now? I forget what it's called now, that usually gets pushed up the male organ into the urethra, that will invalidate the fast. Anything or any substance reaching the back of my throat will invalidate the fast. And that's what we're speaking about when we say that وصول عين إلى ما يسمى جوفا, if any substance reaches a body cavity. Now, if this is the first time that you're actually hearing this discussion, right, then if it's the first time that you're hearing this discussion, it may sound somewhat funny. Someone is asking about the nose and nose spray. The rule is that the qasab, this bone over here, right, the bone over here, if anything, but you must know the nose, once you come inside the nose, everything is open. The nostrils makes you think that there's two passageways, but there's not two passageways. Like once you insert the nostrils past a certain point, everything becomes open. And if anything goes beyond this bone over here, then your fast, that's also a body cavity, and your fast will be invalid. So nose sprays are going to be problematic. Nose sprays will be problematic while fasting. Of course, a person that has nasal drip, and he has mucus that comes from his nose and drips down into his mouth over here, if he is able to stop it from dropping down his throat and bring it into his mouth and then spit it out, then it will not invalidate his fast. If he's able to bring it out and he brings it out and spits it out, and it does not invalidate his fast. If he's able to bring the mucus that is dripping down his throat, if it's nasal drip, if he's able to stop it and spit it out, and he does not do so, or he brings it into his mouth and then swallows it, it will invalidate his fast, according to the official view in the Shafi'i madhab. However, if anyone suffers from nasal drip, I would suggest that they contact me and I may give them a very different answer. I suffer from nasal drip, and sometimes to practice the official view within the Shafi'i madhab on this particular matter can be very challenging. So more details of that at another time. Another question I see over here is eye drops. Another question I see is eye drops. Eye drops is very interesting because before I come to eye drops, I want to discuss something else. My chest area, everything inside of my chest, it's all hollow. Right? This is all a body cavity over here. It's all hollow. So any substance that reaches this would technically invalidate the fast. So the question was asked, what if I apply cream to my chest? So alhamdulillah, I don't apply cream to my chest. In fact, I don't use cream at all. And I also believe that most human beings, Allah has created such that they don't really need cream. But that's a discussion for another day. I apply cream to my chest. And then my pores absorb the cream such that it reaches the inside of my jaw. Will my fast be invalid, yes or no? Right? My pores absorb the cream till it reaches the inside of my body. Will my fast be valid, yes or no? They say no. The conditions are, and the reason why I've only been focusing on the back of the throat, the nose, the urethra, and the colon, is the substance must reach a body cavity through a natural open orifice. An emphasis on a natural, manfad mantur. What's a natural open orifice? Orifice is an opening. So open orifice means an opening, a natural opening that the body has. My mouth is a natural opening. My nose is a natural opening. My front private, both male and female, is a natural opening, and the backside is a natural opening. And then also the eyes. But now, one of the questions that I saw over here was that if I use eye drops, will my fast be invalid? And the interesting thing here is that the scholars, they said no, because they looked at the eyes and they said that when I apply something to my eyes, they spoke about kuhl specifically and tamani, or what we call surma. They say there's a tear duct that absorbs what is in the eyes and it filters through into the nasal. It filters through, this ear duct filters through into the nasal cavity, and from the nasal cavity it falls down to your throat. So because it came through the tear duct, the scholars looked at that similar to the way that they looked at skin pores, right? And they said that eye drops or kuhl that you apply in your eye will not invalidate the fast, even if you get the taste in your mouth. Even if you get the taste of the eye drops or the kuhl in your mouth, it will not invalidate the fast. Exactly, that's the word I was looking for. Yes, a catheter. So a catheter would invalidate the fast because it reaches a body cavity, which is the urethra. Now, however, yes, because the catheter is a substance. Any substance, the catheter is a substance that will invalidate the fast. However, a person that finds himself in such a situation that he needs a catheter, like there are some people that permanently have catheters, in which case a different ruling will apply to them. We will not say that the person that he has the catheter, that his fast is constantly invalid. No, we will have a different ruling for such a person. No. Moving on. Let me just read the so وصول عين من الطعام أو الشراب وغير ما سمى جوفا عامدا علم وثارا. We have a tomorrow evening, inshallah ta'ala, our special guest, Habib Salim, the son of Sayyidi Al-Alama Al-Habib Umar bin Muhammad bin Salim Al-Hafid, arrives in Cape Town, inshallah ta'ala. And arrives in Cape Town, and we're busy preparing a spiritual retreat with him. If you're in the Cape Town area, we'd love to see you in the York Road Masjid over the next few days. Our program starts with the Masrat al-Haddad Thursday evening, and the Mawlid on the Friday night, and Saturday evening another gathering. So classes every day after Fajr, after Asr, and bigger programs after Maghrib with Habib Salim over the next 3 days, inshallah ta'ala. So the planning has like reached its peak right now. And since I'm sitting in class, I received a good number of calls already by different people. This is now the third person trying to call me, Osama Gabriel. If someone knows him, please tell him I'm in a dars and he should stop troubling me, inshallah. وصول عين إلى ما يسمى جوفا. تمام? So, if a person, however, does any of the above, if a substance reaches his body cavity through the mouth, through the nose, through the urethra, or through the anus, forgetting that he's fasting, or ignorant about the fact that he is fasting, then his fast will not be invalid. Why? Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Abdullah, I'm in a class now, you can't play here. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Man nasiya wa huwa sa'im. A person who forgets while he is fasting, he forgets that he is fasting, فَأَكَلَ أَوْ شَرِبَ, he eats and then he drinks, فَلْيُتِمَّ صَوْمَهُ, he should continue fasting. His fast won't be invalid. فَإِنَّمَا أَطْعَمَهُ اللَّهُ وَسَقَاهُ, for it is only Allah that has fed him, or it is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that has given him drink. Subhanallah. So if anything happens, forgetting that you are fasting, or ignorant of the fact that you are fasting, or ignorant of the fact that it invalidates the fast, khalas, the fast remains intact. Now, this is something really, really unique. If you think about it, if you forget you're fasting, think about it. It's a very hot day, and the sun is hot, and you're dehydrated, and there's nothing more sweeter than cold water, and you drink a glass of cold water, and you forget that you are fasting, your fast remains intact. And then on top of it, Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that Allah gave it to you. إِنَّمَا أَطْعَمَهُ اللَّهُ وَسَقَاهُ. Allah gave him that food and that drink. And I can remember being young, I used to tell myself, why can't I forget that I'm fasting? Why is it that I constantly remember that I'm fasting, so I don't forget and go have some water or have something to eat? No, subhanAllah. So those are the 4 things that one needs to abstain from. You have to abstain from jima, sexual relations, with the detail that I've given. You need to abstain from masturbation with the detail that I have given. You need to abstain from inducing vomiting with the detail that I have given. And you need to abstain from allowing any substance to reach a body cavity through an open orifice. Any substance reaching a body cavity through an open orifice. Now, Muslims Connected says, someone asked, does acupuncture and injections break one's fast? Acupuncture, no. Acupuncture punctures the skin, but it doesn't reach a body cavity. Unless acupuncture takes place in such a way that a substance reaches a body cavity, it does not invalidate the fast. Injections, there has been debate among the ulama. Does an injection break the fast? Yes or no? So you get different types of injections. You get what they refer to as, why does it feel like something changed here now? You get a intramuscular injection, and by agreement, an intramuscular injection does not invalidate the fast. So my understanding is a normal injection in the arm or an injection in the buttocks, that's muscle, that's an injection into your muscle, that doesn't break the fast. Then you get injections that is intravenous, which enters the vein, like when you at hospital and they put a drip into your vein and then they feed you medicine and medication into your vein. Does that invalidate the fast? Yes or no? There are two opinions among the Shafi'i ulama. Some says it breaks the fast, some says it does not. I'm not going to get into a discussion beyond that. So does injections break the fast? Intramuscular injections? No. Intravenous injections, which is into the vein. Like, I don't know if you ever had if any of you have been on a drip before. They look for a vein, they push something into the vein, and then they feed medication into your system via a vein. Now, some say that breaks the fast, some say that doesn't. Those who say that breaks the fast, they say that effectively what happens is that if it enters a vein that flows to your heart and not away from your heart, then what is happening is that you have medication now that is flowing into the vein all the way tracing up to your heart, and your heart is situated in a body cavity, and therefore it invalidates the fast. That was a position that some of the ulama adopted, but others said no, they did not agree with that reasoning and say that it's a bit far-fetched, and they say that it does not invalidate the fast. So there's two views. You practice on whatever view you wish to practice. The other thing about the asthma pump, of course, I've stated that it invalidates the fast. However, a person that finds himself in an emergency and he needs to use an asthma pump, then that person should use the asthma pump. You could adopt the view of a minority of scholars that say that the asthma pump does not invalidate the fast and continue fasting and consider his fast to be valid. The more cautious thing to do, however, would be that when he was in an emergency and required to use an asthma pump, he could use it, consider his fast valid according to a minority, but out of precaution, he can make qada of that day in the month of Shawwal or Dhul Qa'dah or any of the months of the year that lie ahead. That would be the most precautious thing to do for someone that needed to use an asthma pump. However, if a person is yes, chronic asthma, whereby every day of his life he needs to use an asthma pump, then such a person, our advice to him, rather than considering fasting not obligatory upon him because of this illness that he has, it is preferred for him to adopt the view of a minority of ulama that said the usage of an asthma pump does not invalidate the fast, and based on their view, continue fasting as an ibadah for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a person that has chronic asthma and needs to use the asthma pump every day. As for someone who during the entire month of Ramadan, there's maybe 2 or 3 days when his chest was tight and now he needed really because of the necessity and the difficulty to use an asthma pump, then it's best that person uses the asthma pump, continue fasting based on the minority of ulama that considered the fasting to be valid, and at a later time in the year after Ramadan he can make qada of those days that he used his pump. Now, additional discussions here is what? Similarly, if a person is forced to do any of the above, a person is forced. How is he forced? So first of all, we say the person, if he forgets that he is fasting and then he does any of the above, jima, masturbation, inducing vomiting, sexual relations, that was jima, eating, drinking, allowing any substance to reach the back of his throat or the jaw, he does so in a forgetful state, khalas, his fast is not broken. We quoted the hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Or he's ignorant that it breaks the fast. So when we say he's ignorant of the fact that it breaks the fast, it doesn't mean that anyone who's ignorant automatically his fast is valid. A person who takes a swab, COVID test, the back of his throat, and reaches a jaw, his fast is now invalid. And now what does he do? He says that I was ignorant and therefore my fast is valid. No. Ignorance is only a condition that is valid for man qaruba ahduhu bil Islam, for someone that only recently became Muslim and is not in the company of ulama and scholars that could actually advise him what the ruling is. Right? Except that the example I'm making is not a very good example, because the fact that the swab break the fast is something that was vague to many of the public and many of the ulama, and many of the ulama actually say that it does not invalidate the fast. And I can explain why some ulama say that it did not invalidate the fast incorrectly. But for that, I'll have to bring up the drawing. I'll arrange with Shaykh Masood for next week to bring up a drawing to show you exactly what I'm speaking about now. Similarly, a person's fast will break if he ejaculates. So let's say no sexual intercourse, no masturbation, but he ejaculates. How does he ejaculate? By how does he do? By touching someone, or by kissing. He kisses his wife and he's excited and ejaculates, or he engages in some type of foreplay with his wife and he ejaculates. Then what happens? His fast will become invalid. He touches his wife, he kisses his wife, or he has some type of foreplay with her that includes skin-to-skin contact, and he ejaculates on account of that, then his fast will be invalid. Now, there is some detail to that, but I'm not going to get into the detail. If a person, however, he sits down and he starts thinking of sexual things, and it brings him to ejaculation, or he looks at haram and he builds within himself desire that leads to ejaculation, in those instances his fast will not be invalid. His fast will not be invalid. I'm not going to spend much time on that particular matter. It's discussed within our fiqh, but I don't see much need for us to get into those details now. In addition, other conditions for the validity of fasting. Other conditions for the validity of fasting. So what were the conditions of validity of fasting? I want you to bear with me, and I'm going to list them again so we can all revise. The intention. The intention, there had to be tabheet and there had to be ta'een. Number 2 is you must abstain from 4 things. From sexual relations. That's number 2, abstaining. What must you abstain from? 4 things. What are the 4 things? Sexual relations, masturbation, induced vomiting, and allowing any substance to reach a jawf through an open orifice. That's all under number 2. Number 3 is you must be Muslim. If you are not Muslim, your fasting won't be valid. Now, the interesting thing is that, is fasting obligatory upon non-Muslim? Is fasting obligatory upon non-Muslims? What's the answer? Yes or no? The answer is yes. Allah's law applies. In the Shafi'i school, there's a discussion that comes up in our usul al-fiqh. هل الكفار مخاطبون بفروع الشريعة? Does the details of fiqh, the ahkam of the sharia, does it apply to kuffar, to disbelievers? Yes or no? And the answer to that question in the Shafi'i madhab, we say yes, it applies to disbelievers. How does it apply to disbelievers? We say because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, He addresses kuffar, disbelievers. We are disbelievers in the fire, in hellfire. Allah says, مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرٍ. What has caused you to reach Saqar, which is the name of the fire of Jahannam? What has caused you to reach Jahannam? They responded saying, لَمْ نَكُمْ مِنَ الْمُصَلِّينَ وَلَمْ نَكُنْ نُطْعِمُ الْمِسْكِينَ وَكُنَّا نَخُوضُ مَعَ الْخَائِضِينَ. Because we never prayed salah and we never paid zakah. So why are the kuffar saying that we never paid salah or we never paid zakah if it was not obligatory upon them? So we say it was obligatory upon them. However, even if they perform salah, it would not be valid unless they become Muslim. So a condition for validity is that they must become Muslim, but otherwise it applies to them. I'm having this discussion here now. Why? Because if I strictly follow the Shafi'i school again, then technically speaking, I am not permitted to, a person that comes knocking on my door in the morning, a non-Muslim, I usually give my leftover samosas and my leftover donuts and my flapjacks and my kusistas and my spring rolls and my what's that secret one called? The roll with the secret inside. And my my panakuk, my coconut pancakes, and my whatever else we had the evening. What I do, I give it to someone at the door. The official view in the Shafi Madhab says you can't do that, because that person also supposed to fast, and you're actually assisting him in breaking Allah's law. As similarly, they say if I have a restaurant, I can't sell food to someone that's going to eat. However, there are other madhahib, like the Malikis and the Hanafis. They say Allah's law doesn't apply to kuffar. So you can feed them in Ramadan, you can sell food to them in Ramadan, no problem. And I'm mentioning this now. Why am I mentioning this? For two reasons. Number one, if I want to be a very strict Shafi'i and stick to my madhab as best and as I possibly can, and that's meritorious, then I should know I cannot give even a non-Muslim food to eat during the day of Ramadan or drink to drink during the day of Ramadan. I'm going to be considered to be doing a wrong or sinful, assisting with sin. وَلَا تَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. Do not assist people in breaking the law of Allah. So I'm sharing this, so if I want to be a strict Shafi'i, then I should not do so. But my bigger reason for sharing it is that the idea of not giving disbelievers food or drink in the day of Ramadan, especially for hotel owners who have restaurants and non-Muslim clients, and restaurant owners who have non-Muslim clients that are eating in Ramadan, I'm sharing this view is because I want you to see how the differences of opinion that exist among the scholars brings about mercy. The Prophet ﷺ said in a weak hadith, Mullah Ali Qari said the hadith is weak, but its meaning is sahih. The Prophet said the difference of opinion that exists within my ummah is a mercy for my ummah. I have a restaurant. My restaurant brings in my bread and butter, puts food on my table. If I say Ramadan, close shop, you cannot sell to anybody, haram, you're assisting in sin, as the Shafi madhab says, then a door for my rizq has closed. But now if I say, the ulama said it's fine, in special circumstances, in special instances, that I adopt the view of another school, I adopt the view of Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala, I'm going to keep my restaurant open and sell food to very importantly, to non-Muslims. Everyone agree for you to sell to a Muslim is haram. But to a non-Muslims, I can continue doing business. That is a mercy for you. And you can see now that differences that exist within the ummah are not supposed to, the differences that exist are not there to divide us further. The differences are not there so that we can fight more and become enemies of each other. The Prophet in this weak narration is saying, what? It's a mercy. It's a mercy for you. Why are you taking what the Prophet called a mercy and making it a reason for fighting? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. I hope everyone can appreciate and see our difference of opinion is mercy for people. And that should never be a means of fighting one another. Now, so you must be Muslim. You must be aqil, you must be sane, right? If you are majnoon, then your fasting is not valid. If you are majnoon, your fasting is not valid. If a person, however, is intoxicated, or a person is unconscious, intoxicated not on account of haram. If he's intoxicated because of drugs, if he's intoxicated because of alcohol, he drank alcohol all night until Fajr entered, and then Fajr entered, he was intoxicated, then his fast is not valid. But let's assume a person was, can you put the aircon off? I'm getting very cold. And Abba's class is going to end very soon, inshallah. If a person is intoxicated because of he made the niyyah for fast, and then he had an operation, and then he was either unconscious or intoxicated, or he wakes up slightly intoxicated because of the anesthesia, and during for part of the day, his fast is valid, no problem. But if your person is mad, not by his full senses, then even for part of the day, his fasting is not valid. If a person, however, is unconscious for the whole day, he took anesthesia in the morning before Fajr, then he remains unconscious until Maghrib, his fast is not valid. If you're unconscious or intoxicated for part of the day, no problem, your fast will be valid. Similarly, a person who sleeps, his fasting is valid. Even if he sleeps from Fajr all the way till Maghrib, his fast is still valid. If somebody takes a sleep before Fajr and he wakes up Maghrib, He takes suhoor, he has sawa in the morning, and I saw Lamkh eat that he just falls asleep. And when he wakes up again, he hears the mu'adhin shouting, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and his buka is waiting for him. He's fasted. He's fasted till valid. Another condition, the fifth now. So niyyah, abstaining from those things that you need to abstain from. Muslim, Islam, intellect, you should not be mad. Number 5 is a lady must be pure and clean from hayd and nifas. If for any part of the day, even 30 seconds before Maghrib enters, she gets a hayd, her fast is not valid. No. No. So she must be free from hayd and nifas for the entire day. So if a person becomes murtad, they're not Muslim, or becomes mad, or a lady experiences hayd or nifas for one moment of the day, the fast is invalid. So, and the very last condition is you should know that the day that you are fasting is a day that is acceptable for you to fast. Ahmed Abdullah, I'm busy now. You should know that the day you are fasting is a day that is valid for you to fast. In other words, it should not be a day that it's haram for you to fast. It should not be a day that it's haram for you to fast. What days are haram to fast? It's haram to fast the 2 Eids, the day of Eid al-Fitr and the day of Eid al-Adha. It's also haram for you to fast the days of Tashriq. Eid al-Adha, the 3 days immediately after Eid al-Adha is the days of Tashriq. 3 days of Tashriq, haram to you to fast the days of Tashriq. It's also haram to fast the last day of Sha'ban. So the 6th condition of fasting is that you must know that the day that I'm fasting is a valid day for me to fast. Now, of course, that doesn't apply to Ramadan because every day in Ramadan automatically is a valid day to fast. Everyone sees it? So we're going to conclude today's dars. I'm going to look at the questions now. I have seen that there are some questions. I'm going to look at them in a moment. But just to recap, how many conditions are there for fasting to be valid? There are 6 in total. Intention, abstention, Islam, you must be Muslim. Aql, you must be sane. If you're mad, your fasting is not valid. You must be pure from hayd and nifas for the entire day. And you must know that the day that you are fasting is a valid day to fast. 6 conditions of fasting. If these conditions are met, your fast will be valid. If any of these conditions are not met, your fast is not valid. Tamam. Let's see. Assalamu alaikum. What about steam from the shower or whilst cooking? What about steam from the shower? I don't know. I know it doesn't invalidate the fast. I just don't know the detail. I just don't know the detail. If you can, if Muslims connected, if you can remind me about the detail about steam. So you're speaking about hot water, steam. That doesn't invalidate the fast, but if you can remind me about the detail, so I can discuss the reasons why it does not invalidate the fast. Now, then we have another question. Assalamu alaikum. Can you have a dual niyyah, that is for a sunnah and the fard fast outside the month of Ramadan? That is also what happens if you haven't paid back your days from the previous year's Ramadan and the new Ramadan has started. Okay, that's an important question. I'll endeavor to explain it very quickly. Can I join 2 days of fasting? The ruling about joining fast or joining salahs, intentions in one salah or 2 intentions in one fast, is that days of fasting or salah prayers are divided into 2 categories. The scholars refer to them as maqsuda and ghayr maqsuda. The essential difference between maqsuda and ghayr maqsuda is that the fast is actually a specifically intended fast, and ghayr maqsuda would be the occurrence of a fast. So for example, if we take the tahiyyatul masjid, our scholars state that you can join your tahiyyatul masjid. I come into the masjid after adhan went for salatul dhuhr. Tamam? I enter the masjid I want to pray 2 rak'ats before dhuhr, sunnah salah before dhuhr. I can combine my 2 rak'ats sunnah salah before dhuhr with my tahiyyatul masjid. Why can I do that? Because the 2 rak'ats before dhuhr is a specifically intended prayer, whereas my tahiyyatul masjid is not a specifically intended prayer. Rather, tahiyyatul masjid is just, Allah just wants the occurrence of a prayer, irrespective of what the prayer may be. Any prayer would suffice. So when no specific prayer is requested of me, then what I can do is I can combine the prayer of tahiyyatul masjid with I can intend with my 2 rak'ahs before dhuhr that I'm also greeting the masjid. Similar to this is, there's other examples, but I don't want to confuse you. So now just understand that certain salahs, like tahiyyatul masjid, greeting the masjid when you enter the masjid, Allah is not legislating a specific salah known as tahiyyatul masjid. Allah just wants that you should greet the masjid by praying 2 rakats of salah, irrespective of what those 2 rakat may be. Understand that. So that just is what Allah wants is the occurrence of a salah. So it's non-specific. Whereas the 2 rakats before dhuhr are 2 specific salahs that Allah has prescribed, that Allah wants you to perform. So I can take this non-specific salah like tahiyyatul masjid and I can combine it with my 2 rakats before dhuhr. I can make 2 rakats before dhuhr with an intention of tahiyyah or combining 2 rakats. I'm using that as a premise because the same thing applies to fasting. Is the fasting something which is specifically legislated, or does Allah just want the occurrence of a fast? Now, the scholars, they say the most common example, the sisters asking the question, but the most common example of this is going to be a person. What does a person do? A lady, she missed 6 days of fasting because of a haid. Now she needs to make qadha of 6 days of fasting. And what she wants to do at the same time, she wants to fast the 6 days of Shawwal, because the 6 days of Shawwal has great merit. The problem you're sitting with is that the 6 days of Shawwal is a specifically intended fast, as how the qadha of Ramadan is a specific or a specifically intended fast. That is almost like the person who wants to say, I'm going to make 2 rak'ats before Fajr, which is specifically intended, and I'm going to make the 2 rak'ats of Fajr with 1 niyyah. So I make 2 rak'ats of Salah, and I intend the 2 rak'ats before Fajr, and I intend the 2 rak'ats of Fajr. That's not permitted, because both prayers are specifically intended. So similarly over here, you cannot join your qadha of Ramadan with the 6 days of Shawwal, because both are specifically intended. That is the official view in the madhab from one angle. From another angle, the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever fasts the month of Ramadan and he follows the fasting of the month of Ramadan with the 6 days of Shawwal, receives the reward as if he or she fasted the full year. The reasoning behind that, as the Prophet ﷺ alludes to in other hadith, is because 30 days of Ramadan plus the 6 days of Shawwal equals 36 days. And 36 times 10, because man jaa bil hasanati falahu ashru amthaliha. Whoever does one good deed, the reward is multiplied by 10. The person who fasted 36 days times 10 equals 360 days, and that person now gets the reward of a year. Right? Of course, the difference here. So in other words, if I fast, the Prophet ﷺ also said, a person who fasts 3 days in every month receives the reward as if he fasted the whole year. Why? If I fast 3 days in every month, then 3 times 10 gives me 30. It's like I fasted the entire month. And if I do that every month, I get the reward as if I fasted the whole year. Because every good deed is multiplied by 10 at a minimum. At a minimum. Wallahu yudha'if liman yasha. Allah multiplies rewards for whom He wants. Of course, on the occasion of Shawwal, if I fast 30 days of Ramadan and then 6 days of Shawwal, I don't just receive the reward of fasting a full year. I receive the reward as if I fasted a full year of compulsory fast. So that is special. It's not like 3 days of every month. So I want you to do the calculations. If a lady fasted 24 days of Ramadan, and then she fasts 6 days of Shawwal, and she wants to combine she's going to be ending up with 30 days of fasting. And if she only has 30 days of fasting, how can the 30 days of fasting earn her the reward that the Prophet ﷺ spoke of, which is a full year of fasting? That is the official view in the madhab. The official view in the madhab. Another view in the madhab says she can combine her qada with the 6 days of fasting. In other words, she can make an intention for qada and she can make an intention for the 6 days of Shawwal. In other words, another view says that the 6 days of Shawwal is not a specific fast, but merely the occurrence of a fast. She can combine the two. But that view says even though she can combine the two, she won't receive the reward that is mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that the person will get the reward as if they fasted the whole year of Fard fast. So I know I've shared a lot of detail. The recording is available. If you listen to the recording again, step by step what I was explaining, I'm sure if you haven't understood me now first time around, I'm sure you will understand me if you listen to the answer again online on the recording, inshallah, tabaraka wa ta'ala. That's in relation to joining fast. I just want to complete my questions. I also limited with time, so I need to get going. Again, and our sister's also asking, would vapor from steaming nullify the fast as well? So again, I say that steaming is not supposed to, as far as I know, it doesn't invalidate the fast, but the detail of that I need to answer next week, inshallah. And ila a'lam, I do not know. I do not know the details of that particular masala. But what I do recall that steam does not invalidate the fast. Wallahu a'lam. I could even be wrong. I'd like an opportunity to look into it and to get back to everyone on that question next week, inshallah. The discussion in my mind is just all muddled up. I can't somehow, my mind is just not clear on it, subhanAllah. And then the last one we have here is, Afan, for not being clear in my question. If you're cooking food and the evaporation of the ingredients are inhaled as it cannot be avoided, it enters a jawf. Would this invalidate the fast? Again, my understanding is that it does not invalidate the fast. It does not invalidate the fast. However, I need to revisit this particular masala. Like I said, the facts regarding steam is somehow muddled in my mind, and I'd like to rather read upon it to be more clear, so that I can be more, I can give clear guidance in terms of what the mother is saying. Right now, I'm unable to answer that question. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. So all those who are asking about steaming, 1, 2, 3 persons, you must come join the dars next week so we can answer those questions, inshallah. Is there another question? Otherwise, I'm going to end the class for today, inshallah ta'ala. Our author is going to get into aspects of fasting that are usually not discussed within fiqh books. Right? After this, he's going to get into the perfection of one's fasting. And the perfection of fasting touches on spiritual aspects of fasting. And our fiqh, unfortunately, don't usually discuss these matters. But our author is going to discuss it, and that's going to be a large part of our class next week, inshallah, tabarak wa ta'ala. So there are a number of aspects. The one thing is sinning, the one thing is wrongdoing, the lums, overeating. There are a number of things that we often take for granted in relation to our fast, and then we wonder why Ramadan hasn't changed us. Right, so a number of those discussions we will have next week, inshallah ta'ala. And then, of course, we'll continue dedicating time to answering your questions, inshallah ta'ala. So if there's no one else, I'm going to conclude, inshallah. Shaykh missed the second part of the question. Also, what happens if you haven't paid back your days from the previous year's Ramadan? So the rule is that if a lady misses days in Ramadan, and then Shawwal enters, Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, Muharram, Safar, Rabi' al-Awwal, Rabi' al-Thani, Jumal al-Ula, Jumal al-Akhir, Rajab, Sha'ban, 11 months, she doesn't pay those 6 days in, and new Ramadan enters, we ask the question, Was she negligent or was she not negligent? Were there 6 or 7 days in that year that she could have made qada, but on account of her negligence, she didn't? If the answer is yes, there was 7 days that she could have fasted, but on account of her negligence, she didn't, then she needs to still pay those days in the next year after Ramadan. But because of that negligence, she must pay a fidya for every day that has gone by. A fidya is she needs to give 1 mud, which is approximately 750 grams of rice. She must take 1 mud, which is 750 grams of rice, and she must, for every day, if it was 7 days, then 7 times 750 grams, that amount of rice she must give away as sadaqah for being negligent in paying in those days for that entire year. Alternatively, based on the view of Sufyan al-Thawri, if she wants to pay in cash, she can pay in cash. I think it's 17 rand for 750 grams of barley. She cannot use the value of rice, that would be result in talfiq. So she could pay 17 rand for each day that she was negligent in paying in. 17 times, it was 10 days, 170 rand, and pay it as a fidya to the poor and needy. The same people who you pay your zakatul fitr to. What else was there now on that one? If, however, she was not negligent, a lady, she was ill, or she was sick, or she was breastfeeding, and on account of breastfeeding, she wasn't able to fast. In other words, medically, a doctor tells her that you cannot fast because of breastfeeding. Not just by virtue that she's breastfeeding, automatically she has an excuse not to fast. Breastfeeding means that if she doesn't fast, she will have no milk, and she will present harm to a child by not giving the child milk for that day. And therefore, a year went by and she couldn't fast, then she doesn't have to pay a fidya because she's not considered to be negligent. Now, I hope that answers your question, sister. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam. Allah grant us tawfiq and understanding. May make us from the people of knowledge, inwardly and outwardly. For these, and may Allah bless us in Rajab and Sha'ban, and allow us to reach the month of Ramadan. And we encourage our brothers and sisters, especially those who are in Cape Town, to join the dawrah that will happening this weekend. That is an amazing occasion of spirituality, of drawing close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said that indeed your Lord on special occasions in the year has spiritual breezes or spiritual gifts that he sends out. The dawrah that we have with the habaib in our community are occasions where gifts are given, spiritual gifts are given. That is mushahad, something that we have witnessed and seen over the years. The Prophet said, فَتَعَرَّضُوا لَهَا, present yourselves by being present at these programs to receive those gifts. So with that, we encourage you to be part of the dawrah, to be part of the dawrah, to be part of the activities happening at the York Road Masjid this weekend. And please keep us in your prayers and your du'as with these intentions and intentions of our mashayikh and our teaching. Ila hadrati Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Al-Fatiha. Bismillah. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.